Get your hand off my penis!
Hey guys, Jim here. Welcome in once again. Today we're going to be taking a look at the newest edition of the Tuyaknife designed by Dave Warren. Now, I'm not going to be getting into an overly thoroughly detailed review of this knife just because only a few months ago, it may have even been the end of last year, I did a full detailed review on the original Wrath. And this is the exact same knife except for a couple of very minor updates. One, as you see here, the biggest, most likely, is actually going to be the finishes that are being made available and the lack of texture that I chose for this particular frame. He has quite a number of options available. I liked the smooth, all blacked out look. I thought it looked fantastic. And just to refresh your memory, I absolutely detest front flippers. I cannot stand them. But the Wrath was the first one that I went, wow. It actually works really, really well. And instead of having about a 20% success rate for front flipping, I've got nearly 100% success rate because the size of the front flipper tang and the severity of the jimping on it makes it a lot easier for me to use. There have been a lot of knives that I played with out here that were front flippers or had a front flipper option, which is really how I consider this. A front flipper would be if it only had the front flipper and no other way to open it, but this is a thumb stud opener that also has a front flipping availability. So if you're like me and you typically hate front flippers, then you're going to love the fact that you can flick this effortlessly with the thumb studs. And if you should so choose to reach up here and try your luck at the thumb flipping, you're going to be kind of amazed. Because I know I was. Because every time somebody puts a front flipper on a knife, and I kind of moan and groan and, and all that kind of stuff when I open it up, I will just give it a shot. I'll be like, all right, let me see if I actually like this. And the answer is almost always no. There have been a couple of rare exceptions where they were acceptable. But the Wrath was the first one that I went, I like that option. It wasn't just acceptable. It wasn't just, okay, it was executed pretty well. It's, wow, I actually like front flipping this knife. Now, I am not a convert by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't hate it, and that's a big deal for me. So, all of the same dimensions, and I will go ahead and refer to the specs here on the screen. I'm not going to leave them up for very long because, again, this is not a thorough, detailed review. All of the things that make the Wrath such a wonderful knife, such a clean, simple, and really good-looking design that's also just about the perfect size for EDC, lightweight and easy to carry. All of those wonderful things are carried over into the Wrath 2, the sequel. Now, you guys know I have a particular love affair with Tuyaknifes. That is definitely not a secret. And honestly, their workmanship is just flat out amazing. Their actions, how smoothly they glide open and closed, how perfect the detents are, snappy and wonderful, and the incredible attention to detail that's put into every one of their knives, regardless of the model, regardless of the price point, is what thoroughly attracted me to them. So now here's a knife that, in my humble opinion, most every knife collector can afford and carry without guilt, because you don't have $400, $500, $600, $700 wrapped up in this knife. I wanted to try to do that, but that's not going to work. I don't think you could do the old reach around. I think you need it to be a little bit further back here to do the reach around. Anyway, so as usual, you have the S90V blade. I don't want to say as usual. I should say once again, like with the original Wrath, you have the S90V steel. And for those wondering about the black finish that's on this, that blade is a true DLC coating. It is not a black PVD coating. It's not a black oxide coating. Like what you see here on the frame, this is the type of sheen and texture and finish that you would see on many companies' blades that they will call DLC. And it's an improper description. Because what they're doing, DLC and the black oxide PVDs are applied in the same way with the PVD process. But it's the actual film that's being applied that's dramatically different. And you could see the difference here between the frame and the blade. If you can look at a steel blade and see the finish of the steel, the actual steel, like in this case, you've got the belt satin. In other cases, you might have a hand-rubbed satin. And if you can see that finish through the black, then you've got a true DLC instead of a matte black oxide PVD finish. That means it is a more resilient finish. It is actually stronger on its surface, or I should say harder on its surface than the actual surface of the steel. You would be able to scratch the raw steel easier than you're going to be able to scratch the black finish that's over atop it. DLC is done in a very, very, very thin coating. It's a micro coating. It's very resilient and it's very handsome. So you've got something that's going to aid in the corrosion resistance. It's going to aid in its overall aesthetic wear. It's not going to scratch up as easily. And it's overall just a much more expensive, more exotic, and nicer finish than a standard black, say, Cerakote or PVD. This is an exceptional finish and not one that we typically see on knives even twice this price. And that's a very important thing to focus on. Now, not every Wrath 2 is going to be available in the black DLC. I don't want to build you up just on the black finish where you think that's the one I've got to have, and then maybe they're sold out. I don't know at this point. I do want to focus on how great the knife is, the wonderful ergonomics, the great design choices that Dave made when he designed this knife, and the fact that they did this compound grind. So you've got a nice thin hollow grind on your primary bevels, and then on your tip bevels, they are flat ground, which helps to reinforce the tip, make it a little bit stronger, and make it less susceptible to damage. And again, it's not a pry bar. You're not going to be prying things with it. But if you were to push into something, if you were to stab into something, you're going to have a more reinforced tip than if this was completely hollow ground all the way out to the tip. That would be very, very thin and easy to bend or snap, perhaps, depending on the heat treat. And that's the other thing. They do a fantastic job with their heat treat as well at Tuya. And that was one of the reasons that I fell in love with them. The edge retention of S90V, that's one of the biggest reasons you're buying it. And why S90V is a super steel is because it has incredible wear resistance. It holds an edge for a good long time, significantly longer than many of the common steels that we see in EDC knives today. The other big reason is its corrosion resistance. Now, if it wasn't heat treated well, then it wouldn't matter if it's S90V. But the fact that they take the care to heat treat them properly and you get the longevity out of their edges and the actual performance that goes beyond what you're paying for, that's why Tuya is quickly becoming one of the best imported brands of knives, because let's face it, there's still, to this day, for some reason, a stigma about the quality of knives that are made in China. And I'm not getting into any of the political stuff that you guys are probably going to get into down in the comments below, but to the people that comment just based solely on the quality, Tuya is getting up there now with Riot, up there with Wee and Reich, the big brands that have proven over time, over many years, of being good performers, of having high quality, of having good customer service if you were to somehow maybe ever to get a faulty one. They are really doing great. And I can speak to that from personal experience with the models that I have produced with them, two of them sitting right here, the Kaladin and the Scaphoid, which again, I'm still mad at some of my followers, my subscribers here on YouTube, because I have made my Scaphoid for many years now, about 6 years, in my custom handmade fixed blades that I make. And then when I decided to team up with Tuya to make the production folder, when I made the announcement, I had a bunch of people in the comments going, it's actually pronounced Scaphoid, not Scaphoid, Scaphoid. I was like, oh, okay. Well, the only way I had ever heard it, and I'm not a doctor, obviously, but the first time I had ever heard the term referring to the bones that are in the thumb, that are in the hand, was for motorcycle gloves that had, at that point, just recently begun adding slider plates over the scaphoid area, scaphoid protection of the gloves. And every reviewer or every retailer that sold those gloves or had those features built into the gloves would always pronounce it scaphoid. So that's the only way I ever heard it. People kept going, no, it's pronounced scaphoid. I'm like, okay, well, if I made a mistake, that's fine, whatever. I'm not a doctor. So I began calling it scaphoid. Then what happens? As my knife starts to get reviewed a whole bunch, and I'm watching the reviews on YouTube and the wonderful things people were saying, the YouTube algorithm started saying, oh, you're interested in scaphoid and scaphoid injuries. So they started pushing a bunch of videos at me in my suggestions. Many of those were being hosted by doctors.
The volar scaphoid, the so-called ligaments.
Scaphoid is a small bone on the thumb side of the wrist.
Scaphoid fracture, and how can you get it to heal?
Yes, how they pronounced it. Scaphoid. So I'm going to go back to saying scaphoid, because that's what I'd always said for years and years. That's the way it is in my head. And I've had to program myself to say scaphoid, and it irks me. So anyway, that's my little tangent there on naming of knives. But here, this one's simple. It's the Wrath. Everybody knows how to pronounce it. Everybody knows how to spell it, except for possibly one or two of my subscribers who are going to say, no, it's Wraith. No, it's not. Let's not do that again, okay? Anyway, so I love the knife. I think it's fantastic. Do I miss the extra little bit of pimpishness that the original had by having the Damascus pivot collar? Yeah, I kind of wish that was on there, to be perfectly honest with you. But there's nothing stopping me from pulling that pivot collar out and just anodizing it, maybe blue or purple or green or something to add a little pop of color. But quite honestly, I wouldn't want to. I want everything to be black. I like the fact that it's all stealthy and blacked out and cool and all that kind of stuff. Goes with a lot of my other EDC items, flashlights and guns and stuff like that. So, yeah, why would I want to change that? I don't think that I would. Although blue looks really good against all black, doesn't it? Yeah, it does. Anyway, I don't want to go off on another tangent. So anyway, if you want a nice, compact, slim, easy to carry folder for true EDC, something that's not going to be cumbersome, that is of high quality, that is of a fantastic blade steel, then I think the Wrath is a good way for you to go. And if you want to experiment with the front flippers, if you're tired of fingering everything, oh God, I walked into that one, didn't I? If you're tired of standard flipping with your index finger on every flipper that you've got and you want to try something different and one that will actually work reliably, then I think the Wrath is an excellent choice as well. So them's my thoughts. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them down below in the comments section, and let's not let that turn into a war down there, okay? All right. Catch you guys on the next video.